Arguably, one of the greatest successes in disease biology, and indeed in the whole of public health, was the elimination of smallpox from the face of the earth in 1979, followed soon after by the veterinary equivalent, the eradication of the cattle virus that causes rinderpest in 2010. These are the only two infections that we have totally eliminated from the earth. Both of these infections were devastating to people across the whole planet. Smallpox all but wiped out the Inca and Aztec populations in the 16th and 17th century when the conquistadors landed in South America and brought the disease with them, and rinderpest because it wiped out cattle from vast areas of Africa. The eradication of these two infections has led to a better quality of life for billions of people, particularly the more vulnerable people in developing countries. The route to this success was in some ways very simple. An intense global vaccination program followed by a carefully focused vaccination to wipe out pockets of remaining infection. Let us consider why we succeeded in eliminating these two and what other infections we could think about eliminating, such as measles or foot-and-mouth disease. First off, the two pathogens are not related. Smallpox is a pox virus, and a very interesting but important feature of the pox virus is that immunity against one pox virus provides protection against another type of pox virus. An approach where cowpox virus was indeed used to provide the vaccine to give protection against smallpox. This all dates back to May 1796, when Edward Jenner, who was an English physician, recognised that milkmaids that had been exposed to cowpox did not become infected with smallpox. And while this was not a new observation, he undertook the critical experiment to test the idea. He took pus from the blisters of the milkmaids and introduced it to the 8-year-old son of his gardener, and then later challenged him with a smallpox infection. By today's standards, such experiments would be totally and utterly unethical. You simply can't go round infecting your gardener's son with a lethal infection. But the experiment did show that the cowpox exposure stimulated resistance to smallpox and led to the production of a very successful vaccine. Subsequently, a series of local, national and finally international compulsory vaccination events were undertaken to try and eradicate the virus. The strategy was designed specifically to ensure that every outbreak did not spread, by isolating the cases and vaccinating everyone who lived close by through a process known as ring vaccination. The real key was careful community monitoring and containment. But you must appreciate that R0 for smallpox is really very low, just 5 in comparison with measles, which is 18. And this low level gives it a relative feeling of the force of infection that would occur in a population. So it's much easier with a low R0 than a high R0 to control the infection. We can estimate the proportion of the susceptible population that would have to be vaccinated to do this eradication, which for smallpox would be 80% of all susceptibles. Much easier than the 94% that we would need to eradicate measles. The global efforts to reduce rinderpest have been truly remarkable, and intriguingly, early workers saw biological similarities between rinderpest and smallpox. The similarities, as I said, are interesting. Both are airborne, but infect only after very close contact. They both generate lifelong immunity. The value of R0 for both is very low, close to 5 in both cases, and not very much variation in the virus itself. If you look at other infections, such as foot and mouth, that's highly variable. It has 7 serotypes in comparison and a very high value of R0 that in some hosts can produce plumes of infection that can be blown very long distances. And this could be difficult to eradicate. So what do we think we could eradicate next? There are significant attempts at the moment to eradicate polio that are over the past 25 years, and with $10 billion has brought the annual number of cases down to the hundreds. Although there is currently a resurgence in Nigeria which needs to be controlled if we're really going to get on top of this infection. Intriguingly, it was the Somalia nomads that were the last bastion in both the eradication of smallpox and rinderpest, but it well may be the unreported case in the Nigerian nomads that is keeping the chain of infection going. On top of this, some of the Muslim clerics have claimed that the vaccination programme is a Western conspiracy to sterilise the population, and there is a continual battle of vaccine refusal and persuading people to accept vaccines to cover themselves against infection. But there is optimism. We've had apparent eradication from India, significant reductions in both Pakistan and Afghanistan, so I'm optimistic about the future. What other diseases could be next? There's always an interest in eradicating childhood diseases. So once again, the idea of eradicating measles is always up there, and it would certainly be very high on the list. But this is going to be much more difficult because it requires good infrastructure. It needs vaccines that are kept in freezers. And so I don't think eradication is imminent, but it could be possible.